Okay, so we're live. So thanks, Deborah, for coming onto this call and going to be sharing with us some insights about webinars and best practices. So right, over to you. You just guide me and I'll move the slides along.
Great. So I have never used Google Hangouts in this capacity, everybody. I tend to use other systems. Um, so Andre, I'm a little mystified about what to say because I don't know how to use this system.
Well, that's fine. Okay, so let's go through the okay, so do you want to just share? Okay, so what I've also prepared, and maybe we could have a look at that, is just some of the best practices around hosting a webinar in the context that we're going to be doing. So I put together a couple of slides here, and just one of the first things was a checklist of the having the right equipment. So, you know, making sure that your computer's up to spec, having the right camera, your audio, what browser you're using, a little bit about Google Hangouts, and some quick tips.
Yeah, and there's a couple things I could add here that, from my experience, that might be useful in terms of equipment. Because the voice over IP technology has not been perfected by a long shot, it's always best if you have, I use just earbuds with a microphone, and that tends to prevent some of that continuous loop technology from causing feedback. So if you're finding that there's a lot of feedback, plug in one of those headsets. They're very inexpensive. They usually cost about $20 if you don't have a pair. But you need to get the kind that have a microphone in them.
Right.
And
So I have got a slide that will show you some headsets. The
oh,
one that
perfect.
I'm using is the cordless one, which is about $80. So yeah, I mean they do vary in price, but yes, you definitely do need something that's you can't rely on your computer mic and speakers.
Yeah, and when you're doing the webinars, people who don't have good technology or good connectivity can cause a lot of feedback in the room. So you'll need to be able to either mute them yourself or have everybody on mute while you're speaking in order to make the call more pleasant for people in the room. Because if you just have one person with a lot of feedback, it'll really damage the experience.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is one of the things with the Google Hangouts is that the participants come in as a view-only mode, whereas it's only the presenters that come in through the sort of the actual contribution mode where your video and audio can be transmitted.
So they aren't able to communicate or their mics are on mute.
Yeah, the only way that the participants can communicate is through the chat. So we have got a participant on this call, and what might be a good example now is if we had a look at the chat. So if you browse around your Google interface, you will see on the left-hand side there's a context-sensitive menu that pops open, and the top blue icon is a little chat. If you click on that, it opens a chat window on the right-hand side, and you can use that to ask questions and to communicate with the presenters.
So I'll just say hello. And so what
Yeah.
about people who are on the panel, Andre? Because they'll need to be able to talk. So if they're on the panel, those mics will be open?
Correct. Yeah. So everyone so effectively the way you joined this call was through the Google Hangout interface. But the way other people would join the call would rather be through the webinar link. So
Okay.
there's a landing page for the webinar, and people would then typically go onto that link and come in through the view mode only.
Fantastic. That looks like a great camera, by the way, that you have up there on the screen.
Yeah, that's the one that I'm using at the moment. It's a Logitech C920, and it's got some really great features because it automatically switches the resolution based on your bandwidth. So if you have a little bit of a dip in the bandwidth while you broadcasting, it automatically lowers the resolution to accommodate that. It's also got this autofocus. Sometimes that can be a little bit annoying because it zooms in and out. Mine did that for a while. It seems to have stopped this misbehavior, but yeah, it has got some nice features, and you just hook it on the top of your monitor. So it's got a nice little. It's also got a. If you have a look at the foot of it, it's kind of got a little plate that you can lift up, and you can actually mount it onto a tripod or something. So it's got some nice mounting options as well.
Yeah, I may have to go get that. That looks really nice.
It is good. I bought it because it was initially advertised as having a privacy screen, which was the initial understanding was that you could then project any background behind you. But when it came down, you know, like you do with this green cloth,
right? So you can create your own. Yeah, you can create your own backdrop if you wanted to use it for video.
Correct, but the software was problematic, and Logitech pulled the software, so it's no longer available.
So much for that idea.
Yeah. I think it was a great concept, but it just didn't work. And then you got the headsets. So the one on the right is the nice cordless one that I use with the also a Logitech headset. And what's really great is you don't have all those cables and wires around. It is a little bulky on the ears, but not too much. I mean, I did have one before, which was almost like a helicopter pilot's headset. But this one is quite nice. I can't put headphones that go into the ear. My ears are too sensitive, so I have to have something that sits on the outside.
Well, if anybody is listening who has a good set of earbuds, I've got them in right now, and this is what I teach with in my online classroom most of the time, and they're really good and really comfortable. For, you know, like I said, actually these are a little more expensive. I think I paid $50 for these. But those that you have there look really nice as well.
Okay, so just another thing most certainly for all the presenters coming onto the call, to make sure that you access the Google Hangout from a Chrome browser. Google is a little bit finicky about allowing their software to work across any browser. So they have the secret world domination strategy of making sure that it works best with Chrome. Then for folk that aren't familiar with Hangouts, I mean, we're doing this now through a Hangout. It's Google's instant messaging and video chat platform, and there are a couple of links that I've put in there where you can just click through onto those and discover a little bit more about how Hangouts work. There are two sort of permutations. There's Hangouts on Air, and then there's just normal Hangouts. The Hangouts on Air allows you to record the session, whereas the normal Hangouts is non-recordable. And then there's that YouTube video, which is really handy. So I'd really recommend you to watch that. It will go through some of the menu options and how to configure a banner across the screen with your name on it and your profile, and get you set up quite nicely. So I've got a couple of quick tips here. So cable versus Wi-Fi. If you can connect your computer with a cable to the modem when you're doing the the live broadcast, that's definitely preferable. I don't know if you've had any experience with Wi-Fi dips on your side, Deborah, when you've been running your webinars.
I don't experience, I pretty much run all my webinars wireless, and we don't usually have a problem. I have pretty good internet connectivity where I'm at, but if you know that you're in an area where the internet is a bit spotty, you definitely would be better being plugged into your modem.
Right. And then another thing here, restart your computer before you do your webinar so that you can free up all that memory that's been leaking out, and that also then just helps in closing any applications that you did have that were running, because you're going to want to have as much resources available for your live streaming and your webinar application. Is that something that you typically also practice, Deborah, or how do you?
Well, yeah, especially because when you're desktop sharing, things can end up popping up that you don't want to have up. So it's good to just have everything closed down while you're doing it, so that you don't also have documents showing that you might not want to have visibly present in your room.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's definitely a good tip. Second monitor, I've just installed a second monitor, and it's actually quite great. I mean, I don't know how I survived so long without it, but it really is quite handy having another monitor.
Yeah, because it can be difficult going back and forth from the chat room to your presentation and to be able to see everything. So that is a really good suggestion to have two monitors, although it looks like so far the chat is fully visible while you're showing your presentation, so maybe this is, a better system that way.
Mm-hmm. Now, I was previously under the impression that in order to have a second monitor, you needed to have two video cards in your computer. However, I was at the computer shop just the other day, and I discovered that there's a nice little USB adapter that you plug it into your USB port, and it actually has an external video driver on this little adapter.
Wow.
So you don't need to have two video drivers in your computer to have a second monitor. So keep that in mind, because a lot of the computers won't come out with two video drivers. That's quite a luxury. But you can then quite easily extend to a second monitor with this little adapter.
That's great to know.
So, believe it or not, we did show up early for this webinar that started a little bit late. But the technical issues were a little bit more than we anticipated. So even though we were, I think it was even a good 15 minutes before, maybe even 20 minutes. Yeah, I think therein is a lesson. Make sure that you are well versed in the technology and the connectivity. It's just practice, so that it all goes through smoothly.
Yeah, and it's, excuse me, I'm losing my voice this morning. It's a good thing to just, before you do your first, if you haven't had a lot of experience giving webinars, just to run some trial ones and just invite your spouse or a friend, and that way you learn how to use the system. It can feel a little intimidating initially, but once you've done it a couple of times, it's really easy. Andre, where's the record button on this so that everybody can record their presentations, or will you be doing all the recording?
Yeah, so, well, the interface, the Google Hangouts is actually doing the recording as we go along. So whatever's being shared on the screen, or whatever individual images are being broadcast, will then form part of that recorded session. So just one of the items here, yeah, if you're not talking, mute yourself so that there's no background noises or anything coming through for the person who is doing that. And where there's several presenters on the call, I'd most certainly recommend that you identify yourself when you start talking or answering a question, just so that folk can know who else is participating.
Speaking of that, how do you know who's in the room? Because usually in the platforms I use, it actually identifies each person by either their picture or their email or their phone number. How do you identify the members in the room in this?
Good question, Deborah. The screen that I'm looking at, I can see two boxes at the bottom of the screen. And the one has got your name on it, and the other one has got a PowerPoint presentation. Do you also see that?
So what I'm seeing is it's going back and forth depending upon who's talking, showing a photo. Correct. So I guess if there were multiple people here, it would identify whoever is speaking by their photo, or in this case, it's only identifying you by your name.
Yes,
go ahead.
Quite right. So if you're not in the desktop share mode, then it's automatically brings the person who's talking into focus and transmits their video feed.
You know what might be a good idea is if everybody, when they log on, goes and sends a hello message in the chat room, because it's nice that the people's faces start showing up right there in the chat room, and then everybody knows visually who's on the panel immediately.
Yes. Okay, so let me also do that and say, hi, everyone.
Oh, there you are.
Indeed.
So maybe that would be a good policy, just to have everybody just say hello when they log in right there in the chat room.
Yes, I like that. I think that's a good idea, indeed. And then, okay, so another tip here, the camera angle. If you've got the camera standing on your desk, you face the risk of having it looking up your nose. So make sure that the camera angle is either at eye level or slightly above, so maybe on the top of your computer monitor.
And I'll also tell you, speaking of the nose, and I'm just saying this because people go unconscious. I've actually had a couple of people, while I've been on camera with them, sitting there picking their nose while they're talking. And it's pretty mortifying because they don't realize it. You know, they've gone unconscious. So, you know, I would suggest becoming aware of your little habits.
Better forewarned than after the fact, right?
Exactly.
And also, you know, I mean, if you've got your camera looking at you, whatever's behind you is also going to come through on the image. So you want to make sure that if there's any untidy piles of items, that you've sort of tidied those up, and if you've got a picture that's waiting to be hung, hang the picture or move it out the way, so that it.
That's really important, as well as noise in your background. So I often am online with people in my classroom who are completely unaware, because they don't realize that even when they have their headset on, that any noise, literally typing on your computer, or a dog or child or whatever, can actually be picked up and be quite loud. So try to keep your space as quiet as possible and not type on your computer or anything, because that type noising in the background is very distracting.
Yeah, and it's you don't realize that it is actually being transmitted until you hear somebody else typing.
Exactly.
Okay, so lastly, let's have fun. So, I mean, I think this is new for a lot of us. This is most certainly new for me. I know that you're a seasoned webinar host, Deborah, but for me this is all new. So I think let's just have fun and enjoy the process. You know, it's at the end of the day, if people feel and get a real sort of engagement from the panelists, I think that will be more important than something that's high polished but clinical and not in any way personal.
Yeah, just a couple little tips about voice. I always ask people if they can hear me okay, because the way that I'm hearing myself could be very different than their experience. So sometimes people will say, oh, you're way too loud, but in my ear I can't hear it, or maybe I'm too low. Also, if you know that you have a lower pitch voice, you may have to project a little bit more. And if your voice tends to be really high, you might want to try to consciously drop it, because it can sound a little higher than normal for whatever reason. So just be aware of trying to modulate your voice.
Good. So Deborah, now you'll see I've stopped the presentation, and we've gone over to the camera feed. So I see your camera's off. But that's not a problem. But if you were to activate your camera, then when you would start talking, you would see that the video feed would then switch to your camera feed.
Yes, my camera is off intentionally so as not to scare the people.
Okay,
early in the morning.
Well, yeah, because this is bright and early for you, isn't it? I think it's 8:30 there. Indeed. Okay, so I think that's about a wrap. Deborah, thanks for coming on online and for sharing this with our other partners. And this recording will also be available for anybody who wants to review it after the fact as well.
Good PowerPoint. Good PowerPoint there, Andre. Thank you.
Absolute pleasure. Okay, Debs, have a nice day. So your
Bye.
day's just starting and mine's winding down.
Okay, go enjoy.
Thanks. Bye.